Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling something that can feel, well, pretty complex, maybe even a bit confusing.
Definitely.
It's all about climate policy, agriculture, and specifically what it means for Australian farmers.
Yep.
Our mission, really, for this deep dive is simple. Cut through the noise, look at the maybe surprising realities of agriculture and net zero policy. And crucially, help you understand why supporting these policies, it isn't just about the environment. It might actually be the smartest strategic move for farmers.
That's right. It's an opportunity, not just a burden.
We're hoping to uncover some insights that show net zero isn't the threat some paint it as, but maybe a critical opportunity.
Exactly. And look, there are a lot of claims flying around,
There really are.
But today we're sticking to what we know is true, what's backed up by evidence-based policy, solid research.
Good.
And like you said, it's not just environmental stuff. It's tied deeply into, economics, generational things.
The future of farming, basically.
The viability, absolutely. The future of Australian agriculture itself.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. Where do we start? I guess we need to understand Australia's unique approach to emissions accounting first. It seems a bit perplexing.
It is a bit, yeah. You need to understand the history. For many years, the government made a deliberate choice.
Which was?
They separated agricultural emissions, things like methane from cattle, diesel use, fertilizer.
Southern Revel stuff.
Exactly. They separated that from what's called land use emissions and sinks. LULUCF is the acronym you hear.
Land use change, and forestry. So trees, soil, carbon.
Precisely. Carbon stored on farms, basically, in the landscape itself.
Okay, and separating those two,
Yeah.
What's the big deal? What's the implication?
Well, the implication is actually pretty huge. It means that any carbon offsets generated by farmers on their land planting trees, improving soil carbon.
Things farmers are actually doing.
Right. Those offsets are not credited back to agriculture's own emissions tally.
Wait, so where do they go?
Historically, they've effectively been given away as sort of freebie carbon credits to other sectors, particularly mining, actually. So agriculture's good work benefited other industries, you could say.
Right. So farmers are doing this sequestration, creating these credits, but they're subsidizing, in effect, other higher-emitting industries.
That's one way to look at it, yeah. An unacknowledged environmental service, perhaps.
Was there a reason for that? Just how it shook out?
It's largely a legacy thing, from earlier accounting rules. But it's critical to remember.
What's that?
If you look back at how Australia met its Kyoto targets, it was almost entirely down to farmers and agricultural land management. Changes in land clearing, basically.
Not other industries cutting emissions.
Very little contribution from other sectors in those early stages. Agriculture did the heavy lifting, you could argue, for the whole country.
That's a really important point, often missed, I think. So given that odd accounting, what's agriculture's actual track record on emissions? Is it as bad as some say?
Oh, far from it. Actually, agriculture is the only sector in Australia, the only one, that has consistently reduced its emissions intensity, so emissions per unit of product.
Right, efficiency.
While simultaneously increasing production. And that's over the last 30 years.
So getting more efficient, producing more food, but with a lower emissions footprint per item.
Exactly. It shows inherent efficiency gains, better business practices developing within the sector itself, not something forced from outside.
That's quite a story. Which leads us to the reporting itself. How accurate have the official numbers been?
Yeah, that's a whole other issue. For agriculture, they've been consistently overestimated for a long time.
Overestimated? How?
It comes down to the standards and the technical factors used in the scientific models, like the full CAM model.
Okay.
And now, major research bodies, we're talking MLA, state DPIs, even the IPCC to some extent, are saying these models have tended to overcook agriculture's emissions.
Can you give an example? Like how much over?
Well, some peer-reviewed papers show methane from cattle might have been overpredicted by quite significant margins. And overall agricultural methane potentially overestimated by around 28%, nitrous oxide, maybe even up to 80% in some studies.
80%? That's not a small error.
Not at all. It makes a huge difference to the overall picture.
And how does that compare to, say, other big emitters, like fossil fuels?
It's a stark contrast. Emissions from coal and gas, they are potentially underreported.
Underreported. By how much?
Estimates vary, but some suggest anywhere from 30% to possibly 400%.
400%, seriously.
It's a huge range, reflecting uncertainty, but the consistent theme is underreporting. And then there's another thing.
What's that?
These fossil fuel companies, under the safeguard mechanism, they get discounts on the offsets they have to buy.
Discounts.
Yeah, around 25% for gas, maybe up to 30% for coal. It makes it cheaper for them to offset their excess emissions.
And agriculture doesn't get that kind of discount.
No other sector gets that benefit. Only fossil fuels.
Right. So the bottom line is agriculture is definitely not the main villain here.
Not even close, based on the data and how it's been reported.
Okay, so we've kind of set the record straight on the history, the accounting, the actual performance. But now, why is this urgent? Why do farmers need to engage with net zero policies now? What's the big why?
Well, one of the most pressing reasons is the land itself. The capacity for land-based offsets, it's declining.
Declining out.
Think of it like a tap, a biophysical tap for soaking up carbon in the landscape.
Okay.
That tap is running dry, basically. We're seeing increased warming, more dryness, more extreme weather floods, droughts.
Climate change impacts.
Exactly. And those impacts are fundamentally changing the land's ability to store carbon reliably. It just can't carry the offset burden for the whole economy anymore.
Right, the sponge is getting full or maybe less effective.
Or just getting hit too hard by extremes, yeah.
And this decline, it's leading to some worrying trends, I hear, with land use.
It is. We're seeing fossil fuel companies, these large emitters, actively buying up agricultural land.
Buying farms.
Buying whole farms, sometimes entire districts, big tracts of land.
Why? What for?
To plant trees, specifically to generate carbon credits for maybe 25 or 30 years.
Ah, so it's an offset strategy for them.
Exactly. But the plan often seems to be get the credits, then sell the land. Leaving future landowners, or maybe even the government, to deal with what can become unmanaged monocultures.
With problems like?
Weeds, pests, and critically significant fire risks associated with those kinds of plantations if they're not managed properly long term.
So prime farmland, potentially taken out of food production, turned into carbon farms, and then left with future problems.
That's the risk, yeah. It directly impacts food production capacity and proper landscape management.
Okay, and what about the direct hit to farmers' bottom lines right now? Is climate change actually costing them money?
Oh, absolutely. The data is pretty stark, actually. ABARES, the government's own Ag Economics Bureau, puts out conservative estimates.
And they say?
They estimate climate change, through increased variability and severe events, is already costing the average Australian farm something like $30,000 to $40,000 per year.
Wow. That's a significant chunk of change for any business.
It really is. And we're seeing the impacts on the ground. Analysis of recent droughts suggests they were the worst in maybe 500 years.
500 years?
We saw centuries-old trees dying, trees that had survived every other drought on record. There's really no doubt, as the researchers say, climate change hurts agriculture directly.
And presumably these aren't just Australian problems. This has global implications.
Huge global implications. And look, the warnings aren't just coming from environmental groups.
Yeah.
We're talking about groups you might consider very right-wing, actually. The U.S. Department of Defense, the IMF, the World Bank.
Military and financial institutions, what do they say?
They're projecting hundreds of millions of climate refugees annually across the planet.
Hundreds of millions. Why?
Primarily due to escalating food insecurity as agriculture gets destabilized in vulnerable regions.
So crop failures, water shortages.
Exactly. Leading to mass food shortages, unprecedented displacement. And their analysis, some of these serious analyses, suggest, well, potentially tens of millions of climate refugees landing on Australian shores within the next 50 years.
Tens of millions landing here.
If global inaction continues and these food systems collapse, this isn't, leftist propaganda. This is hard-nosed business and defense planning looking at global risk.
Sobering. Okay, so that's the urgent why. Let's shift gears. What about the strategic how? Why should farmers actually support net zero beyond just avoiding the risks?
Well, first you have to accept the reality. Net zero isn't going away. It's an international commitment under the Paris Agreement. It's baked in globally.
Right. It's the direction of travel for the whole world.
Correct. But here's where Australian agriculture finds itself in a really, really unique position.
Unique how? What's the advantage?
Okay, get this. Agriculture is the only sector in the entire Australian economy
The only one.
that is not expected to actually reach net zero emissions by 2050.
Really? Why not?
Even the IPCC, the International Climate Science Body, acknowledges this. Because agriculture has inherent biological processes, you can't just switch off methane from livestock like you switch off a power plant.
And food security.
And the absolute critical importance of global food security. So the expectation is maybe, possibly, agriculture gets there sometime after 2100, but not 2050.
Okay, so agriculture gets treated differently internationally. How does that translate into Australian policy?
This is where we get to what many are calling the biggest policy win for Australian agriculture in a generation.
Okay, I'm listening. What is it?
The current government, the ALP government, has committed in policy to a 0% sectoral target reduction for agriculture.
0%. What does that mean in practice? No new taxes, no cuts forced on the sector.
Exactly. Unlike what you're seeing happen in Europe or across the ditch in New Zealand.
Yeah, the debates there are fierce.
Australian agriculture, under this policy, will face no beef tax, no methane tax, no fertilizer tax, no specific legislative burdens or increased costs imposed on the sector to force emissions down.
That's a huge concession, a deliberate choice to shield the sector.
It's a deliberate policy choice to support the industry, absolutely.
So if you connect that 0% target to the fact that Australian ag is hugely export-focused, what does that mean competitively?
It's massive. Think about it. Around 70% of our agricultural produce gets exported.
Right.
So avoiding those kinds of taxes and costs, which our competitors in other countries will likely face.
Means Australian farmers can remain much more cost competitive on the global market.
Precisely. It's an enormous potential competitive advantage. Without that 0% target certainty, our farmers could face huge disadvantages. It could even lead to shutdowns if we couldn't compete.
So arguing against net zero now, when agriculture has secured this incredibly favorable deal.
It would be the biggest own goal imaginable for the sector. Seriously, why risk losing that unique edge?
Especially since future governments might not be so generous.
Exactly. There's absolutely no guarantee this kind of favorable treatment would be offered again down the track. Locking it in now is crucial.
So beyond the economics, the strategy, it comes back to responsibility, doesn't it? An intergenerational thing.
It really does. Supporting net zero, given this context, becomes the responsible, the ethical position.
Why?
Because it's about safeguarding the long-term future, protecting the land, ensuring the industry remains viable and productive for, your kids, your grandkids, generations to come.
So, wrapping this all up, what does this mean for you listening right now? What's the key message?
Well, I think the core message is net zero under the current Australian policy isn't about burdening farmers. Not at all.
It's actually about.
It's about protecting agriculture from the worst impacts of climate change, which we know are real and costly.
And at the same time,
locking in this unparalleled strategic and competitive advantage for the sector on the world stage. It's a win-win, potentially.
Okay. A final thought to leave people with.
Maybe think about it this way. Consider what this choice means for your grandchildren. Seriously.
How so?
Is it better to react emotionally, maybe based on misinformation in the short term, and risk the whole future of the industry? Or is it better to be strategic, to be smart, look at the evidence, be forward-thinking, and ensure that Australian agriculture not only survives, but actually thrives for generations?
And you'd encourage people not just to take our word for it?
Absolutely not. Do your own research. Look at the reports from government, from credible farm groups, read the academic papers. Don't take anything at face value. Understand the details for yourself.
Because the choice isn't really if climate change impacts farming.
No, that ship has sailed. The choice is how bad we let it get and how well we position the industry for the future that's coming.